One thing separates the top 5% in any industry, and it's their ability to communicate. The question is, what makes their ability to communicate with another human so unique? I'm Dr. Dan. I'm the chiropractic advocate, which means I fight for a cause, and my cause is to help you help more people because they need it. In part one, I discussed that all great communicators in any industry, they put themselves in the shoes of their prospect or their audience. If you haven't watched that one, you can click the link up here. Make sure to go back and watch it. What I want to talk about in this video is something that if you've ever heard me speak or you've watched a couple videos of mine, you know I get so fired up about this. Not because I'm a great storyteller, not because I was born telling stories, not because I think story is so amazing because I love movies. It's because I have studied what separates all great communicators, and it's their ability to influence the decision-making part of the human brain. And when you dissect the brain, you realize that this is the part that decides everything, right? This area is the decision maker, not the cortex, this primal limbic midbrain area. Why is that important? Because no words, no topics, no great communication influences more than the power of a story. All great communicators use the power of story. Now, as a doctor, as a chiropractor, I know the first challenge is that you think that you don't need to speak in stories. You don't need to communicate in stories. Facts, data, and logic will do the trick. I'm here to tell you that you would be badly mistaken to make that thought lead to your action, because those without a story will always have less influence than those with a story. I'm here to tell you that all people who have a story and use it appropriately have greater influence and impact than those without. This isn't my opinion. This is a fact based on the science. And so your takeaway message here is that you must use story. Now, there was a book called Story Proof by Kendall Haven, and he's a neuroscientist, and what he did is he broke down that every sense that we have 5 senses, our body takes in information through our 5 senses. That's how we see, experience, and interpret the world. No matter what sense it is, this information comes through and goes to the brain. By the time it reaches the conscious brain, the messages and information that came through our 5 senses are turned into a story. So the question is, why not just cut out the middleman? That's what I ask. When I deal with clients, one of the first challenges I get is, they came here for them, why would they want to hear about me? Because I teach them how to unpack and articulate their signature story. In fact, it's what I wrote about in this book, The Trust Formula. Why? Because the science is crystal clear. When you tell a story, it increases oxytocin. That's a hormone in the blood that actually triggers trust. You want to gain more trust? That's the only way people are going to know, like you, and buy from you. You've got to trigger this hormone. The single fastest and most effective way to increase oxytocin is through the power of story. Not only that, you've got to have your story inventory. The greatest communicators, the elite of the elite, the top 5% in any profession, they know how to use the power of story. In 2008, when I was working in my first practice, my dad had had a heart surgery on a Tuesday in July. I was back in my hometown 2 hours from where I practiced at the time. And that morning, I had waited all morning for my dad to get out of surgery to find out how it went. He ended up not coming out of it. It took a little bit longer, and I had to go back to practice. I had to drive back 2 hours and see patients that night. I was 3 years into practice. The most we had ever collected in our office was $8,000 in 1 week. That night alone, we collected $30,000. And when I assess it, the one difference is I threw out all my scripts that night. I didn't go in thinking I've got to have the perfect line and the perfect sequence and the perfect script. I went in, I told my story, why I'm there, who I am, what has led to my level of expertise and how I can help them. And I said it over and over and over again. And lo and behold, something very powerful that I would have never expected happen. People not only trusted me, they paid full price for care, and they started referring like I had never experienced before. When you start to understand the power of story and utilize it, I am here to tell you, something will happen that you would never expect. The ease to which you're going to get people to trust you, the ease to which you're going to get people to pay you, and the stress that you have in trying to think I've got to have it all perfect and dialed down will literally evaporate because now you're just being yourself. You can take off the mask, you don't have to be somebody else, you get to be you. Now, there's a structure and a formula, but the power of story, it's so deep and it's so strong. Research shows that just one story, utilizing the power of one story, will increase your offer by 6,700%. Imagine if you could have communication where people are willing to pay 6,700% more for what you have. You will build trust like never before. It is literally like rapport on steroids. Everybody talks about building rapport. The greatest way to build rapport is to tell your story because it creates a motive in their brain. It lets them know who you are and it lets them know that you're about them and not just about yourself. Because left in their own devices, they're gonna assume and make up their own story. As one of my mentors said is, you can either allow them to make up a story in their head, which they're already doing, which is not the real story, but it's one that they've convinced themselves of that you're not gonna like, or you can tell them the real one. This is why I focus so heavily on selling with the power of story. Why? Because it makes all the difference in the world from a scientific standpoint and more importantly, from a practical standpoint. So your takeaway is, number one, you gotta get comfortable with the power of your story, signature story and your story inventory. Number two is you've gotta use the right formula. And number three is you gotta know which stories to use and at which time. If you need help with this and wanna drive revenue faster than you ever have in a way that's so effortless compared to anything you've done, click the link below. Let's jump on a call. I'll show you exactly how to do it. In the meantime, separate yourself, be the top 5% in your profession by learning how to effectively communicate. That's it for me, Dr. Dan. I'm out.